Okay, so I hope everyone had a good lunch. If you weren't here before, I'm Naima Hawk from BetaNYC. I'm their Civic Innovation Associate, and I'm here to introduce Dean Labowitz from the New York City Office of Technology and Innovation, who will be presenting on the New York City Hayes Innovation Prize. So give it up for Dean. Yay.
Okay, hello. Oh, wait, nope. Name, how do I?
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. Give me 1 second. Okay, now we're back.
Awesome. Okay, hello. So I'm Dean Labowitz, as Naima said, from the Office of Tech and Innovation, and I'm the program manager of the NYC Hayes Innovation Prize, and I'm glad to see everybody today. So I'm going to go into a little background about the prize. I'm going to hand it over to a few of our winners this year. We're going to have a little bit of a discussion and then open it up to y'all for any questions that you may have. So the NYC Hayes Innovation Prize is the coming together of two different prize programs. So there's the Fred O'Reilly Hayes Prize and then NYCX Tech and Innovation Awards, which I helped start at the former office of the CTO. And the Fred Hayes Prize was started in 2005 to honor Fred Hayes, who was a budget director in the Lindsay administration. And so alongside with being a really incredible administrator, he also was inspiring to something like 200 civil servants to join public service. So his friends got together in 2005 to make this prize in his honor. So our mission is fourfold. One, we wanted to acknowledge folks who don't get a lot of love in their work and in this pursuit of service to New Yorkers, don't often get shouted out, even though they're working often in what can be a difficult environment with bureaucracy, with budgetary restrictions. To that end, we want to encourage folks to stay in civil service, and then we want to connect, a network of government innovators, and then honor, of course, the extraordinary legacy of Fred Hayes. So we have 5 pillars of criteria for evaluating each nomination, and we got something like 80 nominations this year, across a bunch of different agencies. So we're evaluating these via creativity, analytics, execution, impact, and then of course this consistent theme of public service. This is open to any full-time city employee with fewer than 10 years of city government experience, and it comes with a $1,000 cash prize. So in the past, combined history, we've got 19 years, 85 winners, 36 finalists, and then across 38 agencies. So it's a pretty diverse spread of types of projects, considering different types of innovation, and all reaches of city government. So that brings us to the 2023 winners, which we have an esteemed group of here today. So we had 14 winning projects, and that's 19 people with 3 finalists across 14 city agencies. And we've got 3 really awesome examples of some of the different types of projects that we honored this year. So we've got Hsiao from the Mayor's Office of Operations, Sridhar, Doraikannu, and Schuster. And so I'm going to hand it off to Will first, who's going to introduce his prize, or his project.
And how should I?
Yeah,
Okay.
just like a...
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Hsiao. Thank you for having me here. I hope you had a good transit to this place and we'll have a safe trip home. So let me quickly go through my the project that I've been working for years and eventually got this award. How do I go to next? Oh, okay, got it. Okay, so a little bit of background of this project. This project in year 2020, 4 years ago, there's a local law 37 that requires all the agencies, capital agencies, to report their project and the budget in the public online capital project database. So there was a task force, and there was also an advisory board, which including mayor's office operations, mayor's office, city council, and comptroller. That's how this project has started. But the work itself, actually, in terms of reporting, there has been many different type of reporting in the past. Just this law requires everything, all the projects, transparent, without any threshold or, let's say, there shouldn't be any project be hidden. They should all be published in terms of schedule and budget. Okay, so I think there has been 3 big challenges of this project. And so I would just go through these 3. So first is data silo. So there has been data everywhere. Every agency has their data, their system. And some agencies don't have a system. So there have been some ideas, we should create a centralized system for agencies to enter their data. And turn out none of that didn't really work. So how do we solve, first, data silo? And second, data model. Data model is very simple. It's data principle that, for example, you have 2 entities. It's like when you're doing database design, how do you connect 2 entities? For example, one person have 2 bank accounts, or you have 1 bank account with joint bank account with two owners. So that's a data model. I'll talk about it shortly. And third, data collection. To have a project that you have good amount of data, collect from agency, when they have different environment, different data source, different systems or no systems, how did we achieve this? To collect all data in one place and report it. Okay, so first, the data silo. So look at the left. There has been many capital agencies, DEP, DOT, DPR, DDC. They all have their own systems or their spreadsheet tracking their agency project and their schedule. So in the past, before this project started, they used to, this is data flow. They send their data to OMB, and they also send their data to Mayor's Office of Operations. Also, they report data to open data, and they also send it to public reporting. So, and unfortunately, they're not consistent. Sometimes one project you find, they say it's completed 3 years ago, and turn out to be, it's pushed back. It's going to be completed 3 years later because they forgot to update the schedule in the OMB system. So in the past, the data flow is very messy, and there's not so there's discrepancy in the data. So what we did is the solution is single source of truth. We identify what are the data must come from agency. For example, schedule data. Only agency know their schedule. And what data must be from OMB, which is budget amount. Because in the past, sometimes agency would tell us, we have 1 million for this project. Turn out to be OMB says no, they only have $500,000. So which one is more a current number? We trust the OMB as a single source of truth, which is in terms of the budget. So this is the single source of truth, the data flow we implemented. So now everything comes to Mayor's of Operation, our capital project dashboard, and we report it to open data and public reporting. So that's the first challenge. The second challenge, data model. So the question is, what is a project? This is very interesting. When you ask someone agency, what is a project? They will say, some people will say, a project is the FMSID, which is a budget line. You have a bank account, and that is a project. But turn out to be, when you go to, some people will say, no, we use the same bank account for 2 projects, 3 projects, 4 projects. So turn out everyone use the same word, project, but what they have been, what in their mind was completely different. So sometimes I try to avoid using the word project. I would say, are you asking for budget line or a schedule of data? So this data model really, the issue confused a lot of people and audience. So our solution is the right data model. For example, this DEP project, they have an FMSID. It's called a CANS. It's a CANSICO project, and it's a 1.9 billion project. So in DEP, on top of the list here, they break this 1.9 billion to 5 different projects because they have 5 different contracts, general contract or electrical. They have 5 different set of schedule to manage this project. So you cannot say, oh, this is one project, and when is it going to be done? It's 2030, 2026. So the way we solve is we show the data relationship, the entity relationship as is. We say, when you have 5 schedule, that is 5 projects. So the project would be the unique combination of budget line item and schedule. So the other way around, in the bottom, we see, oh, in DEP, they say they have one simple project called PSSI, is reconstruction of Richmond Avenue, and they actually have 3 funding sources. They have FMSID, PS 295, 322, 323. So this is a case that one project have 3 bank accounts. And so in this case, you cannot say, oh, this money is 66 million. You probably should add them up. So you know the full budget picture is they have 3 FMS, 3 budget lines. So that's how we solve the data model issue. We identify the entity and the relationship and show them as they are. And so in terms of the technology, we to be honest, we didn't use these tools or databases has been there for years, and our approach is more agile. We use MS SQL, or for example, Department of Parks and Recreation. They have a good system in Oracle, so we do data pipeline. And for some agencies that they don't have good system. For example, Department of Correction or Department of Sanitation, because they don't have that many of capital projects. It's not worth them to invest in the big system to manage the project schedule. So we offer spreadsheet, and sometimes Excel, Access. These are my favorite small tools. They help to they save a lot of time in terms of data collection. And it's we use VBA, and then in the end, the Power BI, which is how this project is displayed to the public audience. Is the Power BI dashboard. This is a user interface we have for the public audience, and for each project or each schedule, we show their historical data, we show their slippage or gain in terms of schedule, and for budget, we also show their budget variance. Did they spend more money? Which is in the entire data lifecycle. In the next phase, we're going to do more data interpretation. We're going to have storyline saying why, in general, what agency or what type of project you really over budget or take more time to complete. So this is the project that I won this for. Thank you. So. Yes, so that's my presentation. Thank you. Sure.
Thank you. All right, good afternoon. So my project is not an application project, it's an infrastructure project. So it'll be very easy for you to correlate and easily grasp it. I'm not going to throw you with data and confuse you with anything. It's going to be very simple. So how many of you go to online, try to pay a bill or DME transaction, go to a DM office, and they say the database is down? So I think everybody has gone through that. Any online transaction or anything where you go there, the data is not there because it's taken down for maintenance. You want to see something in your phone, the phone, they say, is pushing software, iOS push, right? So this project is basically about automation of the database patching, which is exactly what happens when we take down the database for maintenance. So this whole project, how we moved from the manual process to automation, and how we worked with the agencies to make sure that window is very minimum, and it is also with an understanding with the agencies to know that when they really want to take it down for maintenance, so they can communicate to the New Yorkers, whoever they serve, that is the time their database is going to go down. So basically the whole thing is the travel by us from manual process to the automation. How do we journey went through? How do we reduce the manual resource? How do we cut down costs, the overtime costs, complete end to end? So as you all know that every vendor pushes a software updates for making sure there is no data breach and patching that any vendor, Oracle, Microsoft, Sybase, anyone you name it, sends a software update. And Oracle and Microsoft basically send the update every quarterly for databases. And Oracle, for example, sends in the beginning of the quarter. So that means the patch comes in the January. Then we have that month to test the patch. Then we do the non-prod patch on the second month. And the third month, we do the production patch. So this is the cycle we always go through. So the automation, which I already said that it was totally done through scripting. And the whole idea was, as much as possible, lift the whole thing to the backend using SQL and shell scripting. We want to make sure, apart from that, totally eliminate any database administrator resource handling this project. So what is the manual patching challenges we have? Is anyone, you will know that if you are supporting any infrastructure for that, which is you have to work with your customers to make sure that what time you are taking it down. And if you're going to do it repeatedly, every quarter the patch has to be applied to make sure the data is secure. So basically what happens is we have a dedicated resource, and that person comes, fills the Excel, starts filling the dates, starts filling the time, and you will go talk to the agencies telling, hey, I'm going to take your database down. Most of them will agree. Some of them will say, nope, you have to take another time. Then they'll dictate the time. Then he comes back, tries to secure the resource from our team to make sure that there is a DBA available at that night or at whatever time they are saying, that particular time to bring it down so that we don't impact the New Yorkers, right? So that work, you understand that we have to communicate, send an email, then they say, then I go back and update the Excel. Apart from that, then we have to send an invite to them because you just send an email. Everybody get thousands of emails, so nobody really have time to read the email. We have to make sure the invite goes into their calendar so they know the database server is going down. So all this thing is done manually by a DBA, so it takes around 2 to 3 weeks of manual labor to get this thing done. Then, before we apply a patch, we have to make sure that that particular infrastructure is ready to apply the patch, which is starting from operating system, the database binaries, the database version. Then after you finish the patching, you have to communicate to the customers that we are going to bring it up, the database is up, it is ready for service, please starting your application. So this whole thing was done manually, which generally takes 3 to 4 hours per database. We support our own 600 to 800 databases covering 30 agencies around New York City. So you should understand the amount of work and planning which is involved when we were doing manually each quarter. Each quarter is repeated every time, every Saturdays and Sundays, the third quarter, because that's a production patching, and it requires overtime hours we have to pay to the DBA who's supporting off hours. So our journey, basically, this is how we started the whole journey, moving from manual to the automation and final end product. So initially what we did is, instead of someone sitting and running the script to apply the patch, we started writing small shell script which can automatically do that. Then we had to come up with a methodology how we can start doing the backups. Moving from a conventional regular backups, we have to move to a new methodology which is called snapshots. And then we also want to figure out how we can send the invites to the customer, and also we want to send a reminder 30 days before, 7 days before, and also 1 day before. So 3 times a reminder goes to the owner of the database to tell them your database is going to go down on this time. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we don't want to go and negotiate every quarterly to the agency saying your database is going to go down. So it's again a pain for them because they have to plan every time you go and tell them, okay, I'm going to take it this Saturday or this Sunday. So we say, you know what? We're not going to do that. We will generate a calendar for you for the whole year. So technically behind the scene, there is a dynamic calendar which is built in. The dynamic calendar based on the 800 databases, It comes up with the schedule, and it picks up the time. And we went back to the agencies in the beginning of this whole plan, telling them, okay, every Saturday on third month, second week, exactly between 8 to 11, your database will go down. Every quarter, exactly that's the time it will go down. So they are all agreed with that. And someone said Sunday, someone said Friday evening, whatever time, that's the time every third month it will go down. So now the calendar is released to them, so they can plan very well, better, and inform their customers that that particular time the database is going to go down. For example, agency which serves a customer for paying tax bill, they don't want to do it on Saturday. They want to do it on Friday night because they are doing some processing. So they dictate their time, and based on that, the whole calendar is released for them. So everybody can do a better planning. So that was done. And also, sometimes when a DBA manually does this work, after he was finishing the patching, he forgets to inform the customer your database is up. So we automated it automatically after the patching is done. It sends an email out to the customer that the database is ready, start using it. So that was the final state. And also what happened, because the calendar schedule is already there, which is also stored in the database, there is no need for someone to send the email and send an invite every quarter. So now what happens, automation will automatically read the calendar, which is in a database in a table. It's simple. So it just reads it, picks up the date and time, automatically sends an invite, done exactly 30 days before, sends an email reminder, 7 days before. It also does a pre-check. What is pre-check? To make sure the operating system is good, the database version is correct, everything it validates, sends an email to the administration team to check it, to make sure within 7 days, if there is something missing, fix it. If there is not enough space. So it has to, so the database administrator has a time for 7 days to fix a problem so that when the real patching happens, nothing fails. And one more thing which we did is this whole patching involves 7 to 8 steps. Everybody knows anything which you are patching, there is a backup you have to take, you have to do a binary update, then you have to do some parameter update, all those things. So when the 7 steps runs manually, it was taking 3 to 4 hours. When it's now automated, we said, you know what, let's also capture the timing of each step. So we started capturing the timing from every time the whole automation runs. So what is the benefit of capturing the timing is, we were able to find out that, okay, when I was patching on the same Saturday, 8 o'clock in the morning, 40 databases patched, 3 of them took 3 hours, rest of them finished in 30 minutes. So we know exactly in which phase of patching it took time. So interestingly, last quarter, when March month, when we were patching, this month's first Saturday, we were patching 20 databases. We means the automation was patching it. One of the database was just sitting there, 3 hours, the rest of things finished. So now we know there's a problem. So we were able to go use the data to go and figure out that when the application is supposed to be taken down, the customer did not take it down. That means there was an existing connection still in the database. So it was not able to take the database down to finish the patching. So we were able to make decisions based on the data and improve further every time. So now we know that, okay, so if you don't bring the listener down, people are connecting, we have to make sure we kill the connections coming in. So kind of shut down the network so that you can finish the patching in a short period of time. So this is behind the hood what we have. So I just said the scheduling table. The scheduling table keeps track of what are the servers, what are the database, what's the start time, what's the end time the database is going to be patching finished, what is the edge server name, what version of Oracle is running, what is the patch it's going to be applied. So everything is kept in that table. So the scheduling job picks it up, picks up the database, gets into the server, shuts it down, starts the patching, finishes the patching, brings it up, sends the email, and comes out. While it is patching, like I said, it captures the each and every stage, what time the module started, what time it finished. So we can do a comparative analysis, which database patching took time and which phase of patching it took time. So then we can go and drill down and further improve the service we provide to the agencies. I think I pretty much covered this. This is basically how tedious it was when we are doing it manually with a person sitting and doing it, planning it, scheduling it, running the repeatable jobs took 3 to 4 hours. Then after we moved it to automation, nobody knows when it is going down. You should understand that on a Saturday morning, 8 a.m., 25 AWS servers are getting patched. Nobody knows. No DBAs, no overtime, nobody involved. Everything goes down automatically, gets patched, comes out. Think as if it is in the cloud. And basically, that is the vision of OTI. It is basically building a private cloud. If you hear about that, OTI services, instead of going to the cloud, it is almost like a private cloud. That's what OTA service offering is. So which is exactly like if you go to AWS, Azure, or whatever, they do the same thing. They tell you this is the time we are going to do it, 2 or 3 times, then 4th time they force you, and they'll do the patching. So similarly here it is, we work with the agencies, we schedule it, we automate the patching. So what all we improved is we went away from the conventional backups. Conventional backups, depending on the size of the database, it takes time. We went to the snapshot technology, which takes minutes to take a snapshot. Same way, if you have to roll back, the snapshot returns back the previous image. VMware technology, it comes in a couple of minutes to the database is back to where it was, instead of hours of downtime if some patching fails. So the cycle improved, yes, because instead of 3 to 4 hours of each database, now it's 40 database servers are run in parallel. We can finish in an average of an hour, which is basically a database is getting done in 6 to 7 minutes. And we eliminated all the Excel work. It's DBA working 2 weeks. This whole 2 weeks of full man hours is removed now because everything is scheduled and automated now. All right, that's pretty much I have. I would like to transfer to Schuster to take over.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Ann Schuster. I'm the principal investigator and the project lead for the New York City Health Panel at the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. The New York City Health Panel is a population representative survey panel that was stood up by the agency in 2020 amid the COVID pandemic. It's comprised of around 10,000 people living in New York City who've been randomly sampled to participate in the surveys, and therefore it's representative of the entire adult population of the city. People who agree to be a panelist also agree to take up to 10 surveys every year as part of their involvement. They receive a $10 incentive for every survey that they complete. The surveys themselves, we will randomly sample from the panel itself. So from that 10,000, we'll end up with around 2,000 total respondents for each survey, which again helps us to make sure that whenever we are providing estimates from those surveys, they are representative of the entire New York City adult population. We're funded for around 10 surveys every year up until 2027. Some years we do end up doing more, some years we do a little bit less, but on average, that's what we end up doing. The purpose of the panel when it was stood up was to be able to provide faster, more efficient data that was still very high quality and still population representative. So this is different than some of the other surveys that the Department of Health runs, such as the Community Health Survey, which is done every year. It has more participants. It has around 10,000 respondents per survey, and it's used for more health surveillance activities. So you can look at it. It's been around for 20 years. You can look at trends over time, but it is an annual survey. It takes around a year for survey data to get processed. The surveys that we do are available start to finish between 6 and 9 months. So that's from design stage all the way up to some sort of top line or final data set that's available for more robust analysis. Since the middle of 2020, we have conducted around 31 total surveys. As I said, the goal is to be able to provide data back to the agency for program and policy planning. And I've just put up a couple of examples here of how our data have been used. So we're very involved in the pandemic response. We put out one of our sort of key flagship surveys. It's called the Health Opinion Poll, which we do around 4 times a year. And so those are ways for us to capture data on how people are feeling about the health in the city. These were really strongly used during the pandemic response as a way to do things like figure out at a population level what percentage of people were interested in getting a COVID vaccine, where we were having trouble reaching different populations. So the second bullet point there is some of the data that we collected during vaccine rollout was used to sort of identify communities within the city that might be harder to reach or were bringing or had lower vaccination rates, and we were able to sort of provide that information to the response teams, to the programs teams that were then able to go out and target those communities a little bit more intensively. We are also able to provide a way for teams that don't typically have access to surveys to capture data. So we've done things on food access and food insecurity, working closely with the mayor's office to try and figure out what data would be useful for them to sort of inform how they were proceeding. And then also on energy insecurity. So this is related to things like whether people are using their ovens to heat their apartments and that sort of thing, and trying to understand where some of those gaps might be so that folks could target better ways to improve like a variety of things, health issues for New Yorkers. Also right now, we implemented last summer the first sort of like reproductive health survey for the city at a population level, so we can look at women's health and women's rights within the city, and this is directly feeding into the agency's abortion access work group. And the data that we collect are shared in a multitude of different ways, so have a nice little tweet that's up there using some of our data, but we're also doing peer review publications. We work with teams to publish what are called epi-data briefs, and those are on our website for review. And then, as I said, things like reporting directly back into things like the Incident Command Center for the pandemic. So there's a lot of different ways that our data are used both internally and then also externally and shared with the public. We are continuing to grow. Right now, we are working on empaneling 25,000 new panelists. This is a pretty intensive process. But we do need to refresh the panel every once in a while, and so that's what we're doing right now. We retired around 3,000 people last year, and then had the opportunity to recruit this additional group of 25,000 out of 2 other surveys that were implemented on behalf of the Department of Health over the last 6 months. So those folks will be eligible for the next survey, which will be launched in May. We're also expanding to include 2 subpanels. One is a qualitative panel. I think quantitative data, which is what we typically collect, is obviously very important, but sometimes it's easier to get at some of the deeper issues that people are facing by collecting qualitative data as well. So last year, we asked our existing panelists if they would be willing to also participate in any qualitative research that was done. And this year, for programs that are interested in working with us, we're offering an opportunity to do mixed methods research. So they would have a quantitative component and then also possibly a qualitative component if they'd like. We are also operating a cohort study on long-term outcomes of New Yorkers with COVID-19. This is looking at things like long COVID, but also trying to understand some of the social and economic burdens that people who've had COVID-19 may have faced over the last few years. So this is a longitudinal survey that's right now planned for 2 years, surveys every 6 months. So those are the 2 subpanels that we're launching this year. And then we will also continue to administer surveys that capture lots of different issues that are important to the Department of Health, we are currently soliciting for our next sort of agency-wide survey, which is open to any program or policy group within the agency. They can apply, and that survey will go out this fall sometime. And that's it. Thanks.
Oh, are you on?
Oh, I don't know where this one came from.
I don't either.
Okay.
Oh, great. Thank you so much.
So much.
Can I give this to you? Or
You can.
Okay. I think this is working. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much to the three of you for presenting such thorough and just like interesting summaries of what you're working on and what won you the prize. I think that this group is an interesting one because we have like three very different like types of government work and sort of like interfacing with the public. You know, like and you're working on like bringing the public's voice into government. Sridhar, you're working on like the very backbone and the infrastructure of like how all of anything gets done. And Will, you're working on like sort of conveying and sort of like an active transparency of sort of conveying the information to the public, which, you know, sort of three very different kinds of modalities. But to start, you know, these awards are about your work, of course. It's also about like you as people. So I want to start with the first question of, what's your favorite place in New York?
Okay, so when I moved to New York City, 2004, I lived like a few blocks away from Times Square. I felt like Times Square was the best place. I love the neon light, the nightlife. That was so nice. But things changed. 20 years later now, I try to avoid Times Square. I don't want to be punched by unlicensed Mickey Mouse or Spider-Man. So I would say now I prefer more quiet, a convenient place. Sometimes during lunch break, walk to Chinatown. I walk to Soho, just have a nice walk. So I would say in general, somewhere near my office, but it has changed.
Sridhar, what about you?
So, well, actually, I dreamed working for near Wall Street. That was my dream before I came to the country 20 years back. I really wanted to work in Wall Street. That was my goal, and I wanted to be around there. But after my first job, then I said, no, I will better stay back in New Jersey. So the best place for me here, obviously Brooklyn. I love Brooklyn. Anything around the Dumbo, that area, walk around, it's fantastic. I love that's the area which I like most in New York City.
For me, I think I will go with the botanical gardens.
Which ones?
I mean, I've got to go with the New York ones. The others are fine, but you really can't compete. Yeah, so New York Botanical Gardens. I grew up in a much more rural area, so I think, especially like during the pandemic, it provided a really nice green space to be out, and it's still somewhere that we just really like to always go to in the spring. Looking forward to, I think, our annual trip out there in probably a couple weeks to see all of the flowers.
Wonderful. So I have a follow-up, just because this prize is so much about like the work that y'all are doing and then also just you as people. For each of you, what brought you to city government, specifically in public service in general? And start at your end first.
Sure. So, I mean, I've always worked in the public sector. I worked for nonprofits before I came to the Department of Health. And I think like I said, I grew up in a pretty rural area that had a lot of economic disadvantages. And I think that sort of having the opportunity to leave that space and figure out a way that I can give back to the community that I'm working in has really kind of put me into this place of probably always working in the public sector in some capacity.
Well, I am exactly opposite. I started in corporate world, everything corporations. Even my career before coming here, working at Citibank Singapore, banking, coming here again, corporate world, Unilever, Verizon, Oracle, Toys R Us, everywhere. It's all corporate world I was working. Then finally, I switched to public sector because I thought I'm done with corporate structure and corporate career. So I really want to work directly where I can make some impact and I can see how the impact improves the public life. So, I'm sorry, can't hear me. So I basically last, 6 years, I think, I'm with the public sector. And I think I'm enjoying this as obviously like this award, and I can see the impact where the service which we are providing and how it's impacting, even though we are in the back end, how, for example, I gave the example of how the services, if we take it down, how it's impacting someone paying the bill, how is it impacting someone who's not able to check what is the amount they have vowed to the government. So all those impact is really drives us to really provide better service, and I think moving to public sector is a better option, I think, for me now, and I think it's a good thing I did.
Okay, so for me, I feel like I never never make a plan like what I want to do. I know at some point I feel like I want to work for big tech or I want to work for startups because I was so good at technology. And when I was working for a consulting firm, one day they said, "Hey, we have a contract with DEP. I'm going to send you there." So that's how I started. Then I worked in DEP for a couple of years, and I became a city employee. So. But I feel like I was lucky that I didn't really make any plan. I had this, and my works were well appreciated, and love what I've been doing. So that's how I get into the government. It's not really I planned, but it turned out to be I've been very lucky.
All right, wonderful. And so something that I feel lucky for as the sort of the person coordinating the prize is that I get to hear all of the interviews with our finalists. And something that I love hearing is the sort of different strategies that folks use and employ to get things done in again, what can be like a complicated and difficult environment. So for each of you, and I'm hoping you might share that with our audience here. So for each of you, working in city government usually involves operating with complex bureaucracy and approval processes. Do you have any wisdom on how you navigated that while working on these projects?
Okay, so yes, dealing with government agency, there are so many bureaucracies and there are so many rules, procedures to follow. But I feel like if one knows down to the bottom what my function is, and you have a project, and sometimes the project is, for example, Capital Project Dashboard is backed by the law. We just have to do it. And the way we do is I've been working for Operation for long years, and we are like consultant to agencies. We help agencies to be in compliance. So in terms of how we work is we work together to get things done, which means what law says we have to do, let's help each other to get things happen. It's not that, we're having trouble here, we have to solve this, solve that. And in the data world, my approach is always be observant, see where data is from. There shouldn't be any data from any one person. Always a machine or system behind that. Try to identify that and try to automate, try to make people's life easier, automate their work, so that would make everything less labor intensive. So that's my approach, and somehow I enjoy doing this by automation. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to quote from Steve Covey, 7 Habits. It's basically begin with an end in mind. So I think that's one of the main things. Yes, obviously we are an infrastructure team, we are in the back end, but infrastructure is owned by different pieces: network, operating system, storage, backup. So there are so many different layers which we work with. And yes, what makes the right point is that is everywhere there may be pushback, some places it's get delayed. But as long as we had a very clear goal and the automation, which is not just benefiting one team, For example, if you take this particular project, which I was trying to explain, is the dependency which had in every time, every quarter, you have to work with operating system team, you have to work with the backup and recovery team. By putting this project in place, we not only reduce the resource dependency on that one particular department administration database, but the Unix team, which was involved, is not involved. The backup and recovery team is not involved. So it all how you work with the teams, and it is always, it's not you winning it, it's basically win-win. It's reducing the workload of not only my team, it was reducing the workload of every team. So it was kind of, that was the driving factor and winning formula, I think. I was able to work with every team and everybody's buy-in to get this project moving.
Yeah, I think from my project, a lot of it has to do with having a really strong team. Because of the way we operate, we tend to kind of try to avoid government contracts and use software that are already existing or approved within the government system. But a lot of the time, those ones that are already available are a little bit outdated or not like the coolest, newest thing, which means that we need to have a team that is very adaptable, flexible, and able to handle challenges or extra coding or anything like that it might take to work with those projects. So for us, I think a lot of it has to do with making sure we have the right people around us who can handle things that change at a minute's notice or take a long time to change, depending on what the situation is.
Very interesting. So I think I have a follow-up on sort of like dealing with government process. Particularly for Will and Anne, there's you're dealing with data sources, or you can be dealing with data sources across local government, and they can be collected for different purposes, which is you can have a mix of quality. Can you talk a little bit about how you work through that issue and towards a sort of success in this project, or?
We collect data for groups specifically, but we'll have a lot of people who will come to us and, want to ask a specific question or figure out a way to measure something. And I think part of our responsibility and our job is to help them figure out what other data sources already exist that may be able to do that for them better. So my unit overall and the Center for Health Population Data Science, in which my team is based, collects data from a lot of different types of surveys. We also house the Vital Records Department and manage or serve as data stewards for things like Medicare and Medicaid data. So a lot of what we would be doing is fielding questions from groups that are interested in collecting a certain type of data, figuring out if our process is the right way to get that data, and if it isn't, trying to figure out ways that they can work with other groups within our unit and our center to find the data that they do need.
So for me, because for long years, I've been the hands-on person to collect data. So I have good experience in terms of how to get data from agencies, especially when sometimes there's an emergency task or a request. City Hall say we want asylum seekers, we want numbers, we want this from where. So we have to quickly identify where the data is from. And then in terms of, I personally really enjoy using small tools, as I just explained, Microsoft Access or Excel, or now later we use SharePoint. So which means, for example, a while ago, we wanted to have an indicator to see what a Staten Island ferry number from. But it's really just one number every day. And it's not worth to say, oh, let's go to DOT, let's find their data source, let's build a data pipeline, because in the end of the day, you need only one number. So we create a small spreadsheet online on SharePoint. We share the DOT, say, whoever that person is, please, every day, put a number on it and the date. And in the back end, we use Power Automate, Power BI to take that number straight from the cloud, which is like a database. So again, the approach is kind of agile, and we we prefer to have big system or better data pipeline, but when a lot of times things don't happen that way, we find solutions. How to get data quick is a very dynamic environment working for City Hall for Mayor's office. So yeah, that's my answer. Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to add here, obviously, we keep the data. We don't segregate the data. My team responsibility is keeping the data. So whoever sitting next here, whatever data they are sending, that is stored by us. The only thing we request to both of them, if they do a good job, there is no bad data or data which is not relevant is stored in the database because it puts so much of workload on our infrastructure. You keep the cleaner data, the data which is required, that's what you store it. It helps in better performance, better service to you, and also everything, downtime, maintenance, everything. So our job is keeping of data. We don't look at the data, obviously because of security reasons, we don't see the data, but only thing is we make sure the data is secured, data is not breached, and we put the patch to make sure every quarterly the data of New York City data is stored in a secure way.
Great. So again, this sort of return to you as people, like you each work in ways, and some of you, Will and Sridhar have worked in the private sector before, but these are skills that are highly valued, particularly monetarily in the private sector, and yet you continue to work in public service, in the service of New Yorkers. And so you've touched on this a little bit, but I just sort of wanted to know what keeps you in public service, even when the situation can be challenging, but you keep working for New York.
Should I start?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So again, I feel like I've been very lucky. I have this job and my work's been well appreciated. But every job has its up and down. There are also moments that I went straight to LinkedIn to update my profile after a bad meeting. But in general, I would say, I happen to found what I'm good at and people appreciate it and things happen. So yeah, that's what I have in mind. I don't really have any strategy or plans how to do this or that. So I enjoy what I've been doing. Thank you.
I mean, I kind of touched upon that question already, but I'm going to repeat. Basically, the big difference was early when I make the database fly faster, quicker. That means I'm generating revenue to maybe a Toys R Us, or an Unilever product flying off the shelf, or my mobile device Verizon giving you, when you press that number, it gives what is your balance right away. When that is corporate profit, that was what is running. But now I see the impact, like how I'm directly helping myself, my team, our OTA infrastructure, the whole OTA organization, how it's really helping driving the modernization, at the same time, the impact we make to the day-to-day life of New Yorkers. That's basically is what is making me to continue working for public service.
I think it's sort of the same for me. I mean, we often don't, my team's not typically involved in the actual analysis or in program decision-making or policy-making or anything like that. But when we do see the ways, we see a tweet that has data from our project in it, or we see some sort of a report or know that our data are being presented to City Council, then, it makes us feel good to know that the work that we're doing is hopefully impacting millions of people in the city. So that's probably what keeps me around the most.
That's amazing. So I have one more question, but if there's any questions from the audience, speak now. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Very creative. All three projects, definitely. I mean, it's fantastic. I think each of you touched upon, and I think Dean, you just basically put it very well to that. How the what each project's strengths in terms of what they look at it, how they deliver the product, and how everything interacts. I had a question for Will. In terms of, I think, Sridhar, you touched upon integrity of the data and, the timing of the push and pull, or I guess some kind of scheduling that consistently happens. In your case, Will, since you are reporting on performance of the capital projects, is there a schedule that you folks have put together in terms of how much, when you retrieving FMS data, so it's consistently, I guess, the data is always saying, okay, end of the month or middle of the month, or, something that when somebody looks at an FMS and said, oh, this is a success schedule, or this is a budget at that point in time. And it also reflects on the dashboard.
Yes. So very good question. So first of all, we're collecting two big pieces. One is budget, one is schedule. So let's start with the budget, which is from FMS, OMB's data. We were lucky that OMB, they have their commitment plan on January, May, September. They follow that very strictly, so which means every January, May, September, they would have all the budget line items, their budget amount released in one as a package. So we don't really have much problem in terms of timing of the data, how fresh it is, or is it outdated. And interesting that sometimes agency, they have questions. I have an agency user ask me, why is the number in OMB doesn't match ours? The budget doesn't look right. And guess what? OMB's number is, when they release, there's a period called FMS lockdown, which means no one can edit number. When the FMS lockdown happens, OMB director would take the number for mayor's signature, which means that is approved number. It has authority. So I said, that's the answer I got from OMB. So if you think your number is different from this, I'm sorry, your number is not authorized. It's not an approved number. So that's OMB. We trust this data source so much that this is great. So now, second, the agency data. They send us the schedule. Every project has a schedule. This is part of more very tricky because they have different systems or no systems, or they use spreadsheet. So every time we have to do a lot of QA, even parts, we have back-end to back-end, we have data pipeline, every day just refresh it. Every time, because it's going to public, before we publish it, we would create a spreadsheet and build in some QA mechanism, say, oh, this date doesn't look right because it doesn't seem to be, the start date shouldn't be after the end day, or the FMS ID is doesn't match anything in the FMS system. We built the mechanism to help them to see, to QA the data, to make sure their data is reportable. So that's the approach. For agencies, it's more tricky. We spend a lot more time with agencies to help them to say, to make the data reportable. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I think we maybe have time for one more question. Yeah, go ahead in the front here.
Map. Yes. It depends on which one. Because before the capital project, every agency, they like parks, they have their map, they have their capital project system. They publish their map. And DCP, they have a big capital project with maps, and they get the data from FMS. So our new capital project, we don't have the mapping at this moment. But our next phase, our future plan is to get the shapefile from agencies for their project. And also for budget, every budget has their allocated, for example, community district that we already have. So our next phase would be, yes, there will be map for all the capital projects, their budget and schedule with the mapping.
Well, I think we need one more round of applause for our winners. And I'll put it on the slide, but we have a website. Come, if you work for the city government, you're working on something cool, nominate yourself next year. We'd love to see you. Thanks so much for coming out. Yeah, get home safe.